Despite the negative coverage that Loyalists have earned in the media, it's important to note that all the horrible things they do are not without reason. People don't become gangsters because they are inherently violent, evil, or criminals. People get wrapped up in gangs because they are all too often victims of their own circumstances. Gang violence, including the events that occurred in Northern Ireland, unraveled in socioeconomically disadvantaged and working-class communities. This is not surprising given the vicious cycle of poverty and violence. Most scholars can agree that violence occurs in poor areas as a consequence of conditions they are subjected to. In turn, violence can cause poverty at an aggregate level by creating an unsustained, stable, or dangerous environment which is not conducive to economic development or growth. This is because in impoverished areas there is a lack of an economic or legal structure, which in turn leads to groups, the ones in Northern Ireland being the Ulster Volunteer Force, the Ulster Defence Association, and the Red Hands Commando, to form. As is the case with most gangs around the world, these groups don't have the resources to control and govern their neighborhoods a way a state does, so they have to resort to violence and other illegal measures. This in turn creates an extra-legal system, which is a group of laws and practices that exist outside of a state's own legal system. Essentially, there are two different sets of laws. This phenomenon is explained incredibly well in Jill Leovey's book titled Ghettoside, which focuses on gangs in the Los Angeles area. In her book, she explains, quote, "The boy being questioned stated, 'The place I live at, there's rules and regulations behind living there.' He lived in a territory of the bounty hunter gang. Pressed for details, he did not say what those rules were or how he had come to learn them, simply that they existed for him unquestionably, enforced by an implied threat that surrounded him, as ever-present as the roar of the traffic from the elevated freeways, and that to many officers, black residents of these ghetto-side neighborhoods seemed so incomprehensibly perverse and hostile, so hell-bent on not making things better for themselves. And the same community bristled and postured in response. Yet, beneath all this dysfunction, just as the cops yearned to be do-gooders and that helped people, the community yearned for their help. Much like the gangs in Los Angeles, the gangs in Northern Ireland are not just merely brushed off, cannot be just merely brushed off and told they are simply thugs or gangsters. Their social economic structures might seem alarming to those who do not live within them, but for those who are within these structures, they simply do not know any different. Ultimately, and unfortunately, it is the same state that says these people have no place in our society to pay attention and to understand these communities. However, until Northern Ireland is able to break the cycle of violence and poverty effectively within Protestant working-class neighborhoods, Loyalists will most likely continue to act as gangsters. So yes, Loyalists are gangsters.